States, making personal sacrifices to keep others safe. And please just join me for a moment of silence in Tim's honor. And please keep Tim's family in our prayers. We all share in the grief from this devastating loss to his family, friends, and the whole wildland firefighting community. We are flying a Montana flag in Tim's honor at the state capitol, and Susan and I will keep Tim's wife, Michelle, and his family and friends, and all the colleagues in our prayers during this difficult time. This tragic accident reminds us that firefighting is a dangerous activity, and we must be grateful for those who risk their lives to protect our communities, way of life, and natural resources in Montana. So thank you for joining me in that. Before we begin today, I'd like to quickly allow those here at the group to introduce themselves. So if we could just start. Director, do you mind?
Absolutely. Amanda Castro, Director of the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation.
And General?
Major General Pete Ronick. I am the Adjutant General for the state of Montana and also the Director of the Department of Military Affairs.
I'm Colonel Mitch Marini, and I'm the Director of Joint Operations for the Montana National Guard.
Lila Bruno, Administrator for Montana Disaster and Emergency Services.
Jay Donahue, Montana Disaster and Emergency Services, Bureau Chief.
Good morning, Governor. John Melhoff, State Director, Bureau of Land Management.
Good morning, Aaron Thompson, State Fire Management Officer, Bureau of Land Management.
Good morning, David Clement. I'm the Air Quality Bureau Chief at the Department of Environmental Health. Good morning, Rich Coward. I'm the President of the Montana State Fire Chiefs Association.
Good morning, Governor. I'm Jim Forsyth, Fire Management Officer for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Good morning, Melanie Glossa, I'm Deputy Regional Forester for the Coast Westlands.
Good morning, Colleen Haskell, meteorologist for Predictive Services.
Good morning, John Monsey, Deputy Chief Fire Protection Bureau, DNRC.
Good morning, Governor. Thanks for having us. I'm Sonia Gurman. I'm the Division Administrator for Forestry Division, DNRC.
Great.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for being here. As Montanans, we're proud to work together to protect our neighbors, our communities, and the resources we depend on. It's the strength of the partnerships at this table that keep our state safe and resilient during fire season. Thank you all for being here. I look forward to the discussion and getting the briefing today. While we're here this morning to discuss the core of the 2021 fire year, we all know that we don't just deal with fire during the summer. It's a year-round threat to our homes and communities that we have to be prepared for. I want to thank all of our wildland firefighters who are actively responding to fires and those who are onboarding and engaging in critical training in preparation for the upcoming season. Our firefighters brave long hours, sleepless nights, searing temperatures, rugged terrain, and time away from loved ones during fire season. They put their lives at risk to protect Montanans, and we are indebted to all of them. As we know, the 2021 Drought and Water Advisory Committee confirms what many citizens across the state are experiencing. Much of Montana is currently in moderate to extreme drought conditions. I've already heard from farmers and ranchers in eastern Montana who are worried about the lack of rain and what it means for their operations heading into this summer and fall. Later this morning, we'll hear from Colleen Haskell on the fire season forecast. But all signs point to above normal fire activity in Montana this summer. This group represents the wildland firefighting resources in the state, and I appreciate the work you're doing to prepare us for this wildfire season. But it can't just be the folks sitting here in this room. All Montanans need to work together to reduce the burden of our firefighting resources this summer and to prevent wildfires. While we can't control the weather, we can control our actions. Approximately 80% of wildland fires in Montana are caused by humans, burning an average of 70,000 acres every year. These fires can result in the loss of homes, productive rangelands, threaten communities and infrastructure, and cost America and Montana taxpayers millions of dollars. Not to mention, these preventable fires put firefighter and public safety at risk. We all have a personal responsibility to one another and to our communities to have measures to prevent wildland fire starts when working or recreating outdoors. As your governor, I'm also committed to using all the tools available to improve and expand forest management in Montana. Working together with Director Castor at the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, we've made it a goal to double the number of treated acres as compared to last year. Active forest management prevents catastrophic fires, protects our natural resources, and supports our local economies. Similar to other states across the West, Montana forests are threatened by insects, disease, and increased fuel loading, all of which put millions of acres at high risk to elevated wildfire. While we have identified nearly 9 million acres with significant forest health and wildfire risk issues, by setting out to treat twice as many acres this year as we did last year, we'll create conditions that are safer for firefighters to respond in. We will also increase the chances of a fire staying small. Given the forest health crisis here in Montana, I call on all of us around this table to get more private, state, tribal, and federal acres into active forest management to reduce the risk facing our communities. Our goal to double the number of treatable acres is only the beginning. I look forward to working with all of you to bring back health to our forests, protect our communities, and create jobs along the way. I just want to wrap up my comments. I'd like to say that I'm hopeful and confident in the future when I look at all the faces around the table. This group is committed to reducing wildfire risk across the state and protecting Montanans in our homes. I can say that from my early conversations with Director Castor here at the state, we are as prepared as we've ever been. Thank you again for being here. I look forward to hearing from each of you. With that, Director Castor, would you like to take it from here?
Absolutely. So thank you very much, Governor, for your just support, your commitment, and exceptional leadership in this space. And thank you to you all as our partners for being here, as well as Major General Ronick. Appreciate your coordination with us as well. As we approach the core of the 2021 fire season, I want to express my firm commitment to ensuring a successful fire season on behalf of the state of Montana. I look forward to working with each of you all under our shared desire to protect our neighbors and the landscapes we all value. Here in Montana, as the governor noted, our forests are facing unprecedented forest health and wildfire risks. It is imperative that we use all tools available and resources to manage our forests so we can protect Montanans, our communities, and the natural resources we depend on during the core of the 2021 fire season. At the DNRC, firefighter and public safety is and always will be our highest priority. The commitment and accountability for safety is a joint responsibility shared by all firefighters, managers, and administrators. As with every year, the DNRC will respond immediately and with one primary goal: put the fire out as safely and as quickly as possible. Our response model of fast and effective initial attack is reinforced and made possible through the help of our local, state, tribal, and federal partners. We remain committed to coordinated and effective wildfire response with our partners to ensure the safety of our firefighters and Montanans, and will continue working together to get the proper resources and equipment in place to meet the projected need across Montana. We all know Montana's wildfire seasons have become longer and more severe, making the need for well-coordinated fire response and active forest management increasingly evident. The Montana Forest Action Plan, which the DNRC completed in December of 2020, identified approximately 9 million acres of forested land at significant risk for insect, disease, and catastrophic wildfire. Of those at-risk acres, we identified nearly 4 million acres of forest land that would benefit the most from cross-boundary forest restoration, which we call the priority areas for focused attention. These areas were selected because of the wildfire risk they pose to Montana communities and the presence of significant forest health issues. While they are not the only areas in the state needing attention, they highlight the need to accelerate forest management and restoration across all ownerships. The DNRC is committed to working with partners to carry out the directive given to us under the Montana Comeback Plan to increase active management. And in working in coordination with the governor, the DNRC is working to treat 25,000 acres this year, which, as the governor noted earlier, is more than double what we treated last year. Together with my colleagues around the table today, we are working to bring more acres into active management. We are using the Montana Forest Action Plan to help coordinate our efforts. And by working collectively, we are investing in projects across the state that will help reduce fire risk at a pace and scale that were not previously feasible. At the DNRC, we know that healthy forests mean fire-resilient landscapes. Governor, you will hear about our fire operations and preparedness from Sonia Gurman and John Monzi in a minute, but in addition to our fire protection program, the DNRC works year-round to help reduce the burden of our firefighting resources through active forest management to improve health and reduce wildfire risk. At the DNRC, we also have a thriving Good Neighbor Authority program and Trust Lands Management Division, both of which deliver consistent supply of material for the forest products industry, while also helping to make our forests safer for firefighters and improving forest conditions. Along with our partners at the NRCS, we continue to assist private landowners and the public in taking care of their forested land and communities. Like you said before, it is all of our responsibility to make sure our communities are fire adapted, and we take that responsibility seriously. Finally, with our partners at DES and our local government cooperators, the DNRC continues to be responsive to the needs of local communities through our county co-op program and other local disaster assistance. When it comes to keeping Montanans safe, we will continue to work together both during the fire season and throughout the rest of the year. In closing, I want to assure you, Governor, that the DNRC is ready, willing, and able to fight wildfires across Montana. We remain committed to actively managing across boundaries to limit catastrophic wildfires while maintaining and strengthening our effective wildfire response. Thank you all for your support of the DNRC's fire protection program and your interest in our planning efforts for the current fire season. I look forward to answering any questions you may have. With that, Major General Ronick.
Thanks, Amber. Well, good morning, everyone. Major General Pete Ronick, again, Director of the Military Affairs, which underneath me follows the Disaster Emergency Services, and then as the Adjutant General, the Army and the air side that we have that can support the fire. So, Governor, to support you in fires, DNRC led, absolutely, but we're there with a fair amount of resources if needed to do that. So we're not really in a competition mode. It's really more of what do you need when the governor either calls for activation of our forces. We tend to be more the last one in, the first one out type of, but again, it's really your direction, what we need, and we're challenged now to make sure we have safe and prepared soldiers and airmen, whether on the ground or in the air, to support you. On the Department of on the Disaster Emergency Services side, we hope to help provide support, situational awareness, how we work your state emergency disaster declarations that you're going to need to get resources, mostly from outside the state that you'll need, and that anything we need from a presidential declaration side, we help you with that process to get those resources in, whether it's from surrounding states or from the federal government. And then we provide quite a bit of a resource support based on what your needs are to that. And then on the military side of the house, again, we have a lot of capabilities that we have with federal resources that we can use in the domestic side of the house. So we'll bring those to bear with trained soldiers and airmen if you need them, and then also aviation assets if needed. So you'll get more in depth with that. But we're just here to support that. We're fairly visible, but I think really to support you, Amanda, and I appreciate the relationship that I've seen already as we prepare. Thank you.
And Governor, with your concurrence, I would offer to facilitate us through.
That would be great.
through
Thank you,
the
Sonia.
meeting. All right. And just for clarity, do I pass both of these? Okay. So now we're going to turn to Colleen, who's going to share with us the fire season forecast.
Good morning again. We're going to discuss a few of the factors that have been considered for this year's fire year outlook. And I don't say fire season outlook because it's already been a fire year. As we know, now we're seeing more of what is typical for a late summer pattern rather than a late spring or early summer pattern. So while the antecedent conditions, the drought conditions for the longer term factors are very important. We also are offsetting those with some of the short-term benefits. So we'll look at those weighted factors as we go through the outlook for this year. One of the longer-term factors that we will consider is the possibility of a southwest monsoon developing this year in late July, and that is different than what we saw last year with the monsoon. We didn't see that, and so it does offer some benefits, but it also offers more lightning, as we've already seen this week in a pre-monsoonal pattern. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So before we look at the outlook, we need to kind of set the stage a little bit for what we've already seen during what's typically our shoulder seasons or our off season. So far this year, in Montana, we've already burned 32,000 acres that have been reported from wildland fires, and those are 600 fires so far since the beginning of January. All but 30 of those were human-caused fires. So nearly half of our acreage for the year has already burned. And particularly east of the divide, that coincided with more of the wind events this year, starting in the early spring. One of the things that really characterized our early spring, well, late winter and early spring, was that polar plunge in the second week of February. So while it was very cold and it offered, a respite from the warm and dry winter that we saw, it basically freeze-dried the fuels. The finer fuels and the shrubbery, it just lost any moisture that it had already. And with the frozen ground in place already, none of the moisture that melted made it into the subsoils. So that's something that we're considering about the characteristics of the fuels that are present from the overwintering. Anecdotally, we also saw more of the downslope wind events this year than we typically see in the winter and spring. Those Chinook winds on the east side of the Continental Divide, whether it's in Great Falls or Miles City, it melted a lot of the snow and sublimated the snow very quickly so that it didn't remain on the ground. And so a lack of snowpack in the eastern part of Montana kept the fuels from compacting. Ordinarily, that snowpack will act to mechanically, compost the fuels and mash them down. But this year we have what's called a carryover or a standing dead component. So while the drought won't produce as much fuel, grass, we do have that standing carryover fuel that we're continuing to monitor through a program called FuelCast. So that is contributing to our decisions. Now, after that polar plunge in February, we did start to get more snowpack west of the Continental Divide in the Bitterroot National Forest and also in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, but the rest of the area remained dry through spring. So that's something that we're definitely considering, particularly for northwest Montana and also south central and southeast Montana. What had occurred last fall with the drying has continued. So while we do have a few pockets since the water year began in October where we have higher than average precip, by and large, everything is below average, and the drought reflects that. So as far as the growing season now that is underway, the way that it was described to me by Dr. Matt Reeves at the Fire Lab is that the cake is already baked. The peak for our green up is underway or imminent, and it should occur by the 20th of June was the date that he put out there. So this is about as good as it's going to get with the growing season. Now those fuels are tapping into the deeper soils and they're exchanging moisture with the air. And as those cure out over the next several weeks, that's when we're going to be looking at that transition towards above average fire season. So yes, once again, even though the production of the fuel is lower this year, so we won't have as much fuel to burn, we still have that component of the standing dead. So since the water year began, as I mentioned, the only areas that we've seen real dent or improvement in precip anomalies, that's over the northern Rocky Mountain front adjacent to the Continental Divide. So places like Augusta and Choteau, that was one event. That was over the Memorial Day weekend holiday, 2 to 4 inches. And it did stretch back towards the Bitterroot Divide, but everything else on the map is red, very much below average. And when I'm referring to these graphics, I have this as a recorded briefing, and I have the graphics as slides if you want to refer to any of them later. So looking at more specifically for the last 30 days and what is underway right now, we've seen the news, and there's severe weather and there's heavy rain, and it gives folks the perception that everything's okay. But that's where I say the short-term benefits versus the long-term effects, it's just going to make a dent or help out to buy us a little bit of time for the rest of June to keep us near normal for the fire season. Because that heavy rain is very spotty, it's very quick, and what we need are long duration periods with elevated relative humidity. So the driest area that we're seeing for the last 30 days is really over the southern half of Montana, because we did get a little bit of relief with that Memorial Day weather system. If we look at things from a remote sense, green up, the driest areas or the areas that we're not seeing it, it's already either cured out or green up never happened. It was stunted, continued to be over the northeast half of Montana, basically from Roundup north. But as you know, northeast Montana is poised for heavy rain. They got a lot of rain last night, and then again for tomorrow. So the next thing I wanted to talk about are the longer-term concerns. So that's the short-term benefits that we're seeing for today and tomorrow. But because of the longer-term drought, those soil moistures are in a deficit. And the evaporative demand is higher. It's at its peak right now. It's trying to stretch really deep in the soil. And even though on the top layer of the soil, we have some moisture from the recent rain, there's nothing, it's bone dry underneath. So Montana is relatively better than what we see for our neighboring states in North Dakota. Things are much more extreme there, and of course over the southwest U.S. where we're in a historic drought that is not only in magnitude but in expanse. Geographically, it's a wider spread area, wider than we've seen for over 125 years. This is the second year running, so the way it's been coined is these back to back to back. It's a very persistent pattern rather than a short-term drought. And big takeaway for me with this is that we will be sharing resources with our neighboring states, with our neighboring geographic areas, but also with that widespread of a drought and with the expectation of their above average fire seasons, I fully think that we will have another smoke episode this year, and so we're preparing for that as well. That's another message that we're tailoring to manage people's expectations, whether it's the smoke that we see from our wildfires or the smoke that's coming in from the west. So we'll be ready for that as well, Governor. Now, the expectation for the drought, there are some pockets on there west of the Continental Divide that are in the yellow category, which means that it's abnormally dry, as you mentioned, or moderate drought. But the predictions through August 31st for the drought outlook is that all of those holes will be filled in and the drought will become, across the board, across Montana. So I mentioned already that the fires and the acreage since January 1st is already about half of what we ordinarily would see. But moving forward, the expectation from the Climate Prediction Center is for warmer and drier. Not just for June, the rest of the month. We are expecting another ridge later this weekend and next week, a ridge of high pressure. And that's the pattern, or the critical fire weather pattern, or the setup of the 1-2 punch that I look for. Similar to what we saw last September, which was exceptionally rare for that month. High pressure ridges that are that strong and that persistent, when it breaks down, part two of the punch is when we get the lightning and the wind. And so as folks are reading our discussions on our outlooks 7 to 10 days ahead of time, those are kind of the buzzwords that they're going to be listening for as high pressure ridge or breakdown of the upper ridge, because that could lead to new ignitions from lightning or human-caused ignitions that could be spread by wind. Now, the composite pattern from last September was extreme, as it was in 2017, but we are in a completely different climate regime than we were in 2017. I often get this question, do you think that we're going to see record? And for one thing, we can't really predict records because they're outside of our bell curve, our range of predictability. But I do think that we will see above normal for the fire season. So what is normal, right? I wanted to mention that everything that we compare to normal for the 30-year climatology periods has changed. Last month, the NOAA has published the new normals that are more reflective of the latest period of record. So it's 1991 to 2020. And so it already accounts for the warming and drying climate. So that's something that needs to be considered in the biases as we move forward, looking at the guidance that we use so much for our outlooks. So 7 to 10 days out, we are going to be looking for those patterns for triggers and for spread events. We're going to be coordinating with our partners for readiness and resource availability so that we're staying ahead of it, those high pressure ridges. For the rest of the month of June, the things that I'm hanging my hat on are that green up is underway in many areas, and we haven't transitioned fully to the curing of those finer fuels. Now, some places have, and that's aspect driven, like south aspects. It's also elevation driven. But for the rest of the month, we're looking at near normal. July, we're looking for above normal fire potential along the Continental Divide and west of the divide in western Montana for the reasons that you mentioned about the bug kill, some of the underlying conditions with respect to the heavier fuels, and also the expectation that we'll see a stronger monsoon than what we've seen the last 2 years. So even though we will see spotty thunderstorm rains in July, we will also see more lightning and holdover fires. But then in August, as that ridge establishes itself as it's expected to by the Climate Prediction Center, I think we'll get more wind events on the east side of the Continental Divide, similar to what we saw last September. And so above normal fire potential is expected for all of the geographic area, all of Montana for August. All of the climate signals are pointing towards a double dip La Nina, which would tell me that for this fall, we could be going towards more of a normal temperature and precip regime. So the outlooks that I'm looking at are for us to return to normal in September, maybe not the very beginning of the month, but tapering off towards normal throughout the fall months, rather than what we saw last year where our core fire month was in September, when typically we expect a season-ending event. So as I mentioned, all of the narratives and the outlooks are available on our website. We update the outlook year-round on the first of every month, and so all of those materials are available, as well as any questions that you might have for me.
Thank you, Colleen.
You're welcome.
2 questions.
Yes.
Based on what you know today, is there any region of the state that you're more concerned about catastrophic fire?
I'm more concerned about the big hole in southwest Montana because of the persistent dryness over the last 2 seasons back to back. I'm also concerned about east central and southeast Montana for the same reasons, because of the drought. Also, where I expect the warmest and the driest areas to set up do include the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So the ridge of high pressure, I think, will be establishing itself from kind of a southeast to northwest. The northwest U.S. really is going to be under the gun, but it does extend all the way back to the Yellowstone National Park area.
And you mentioned that you expect elevated risk in July. What would have to happen weather-wise for that to be mitigated?
For that to become mitigated would be if we received more precipitation with the southwest monsoon, if it becomes more robust, or if we were to get a Pacific tropical system coming in from Arizona, that would help us buy a little bit more time until the winds come in August. You're welcome.
Thank you, Colleen, so much for being here and traveling over. And Governor, I overlooked that we have a couple of people on the phone as well. If we wanted to introduce those folks. Can you hear us, visitors over Zoom? either Bryce or Jay on? Right. I guess we will revisit that. Thank you, Colleen. So DNRC, we're going to go next, and then we'll turn to our cooperators. And Governor, thank you so much for having us today, and thank you for the kind words for Tim Hart and his family. And as you know, a loss in the firefighting community is a loss to all of us, and all of us, I know that we grieve for that loss for our Forest Service partners and for the family. And Governor, the resounding message that I think you're going to hear from us today is that we don't do this alone. We share in the losses, we share in the responsibility and challenges, and we share in the success of firefighting. Fire is inherently interagency, and the success of our mission is built upon our strong partnerships, the training and excellence of our firefighting resources, and our commitment to informed decision-making. We prepare for fire season every year, as you know, and I'm proud to report that every single relationship around the table is strong. And while Colleen mentioned, we've been responding to wildfires since January, and it really is a fire year. In anticipation of the warmer months to come, I'm happy to report that we are prepared for the fire season. Last year, we were faced with additional challenges given the onset of COVID. And although many of us, it's so good to see everybody's faces, we're here in person, we are still in a pandemic, and we're all committed to taking measures to keep our firefighting resources healthy this year so we're able to effectively respond to wildfires. And Governor, I know you know this, but Montana DNRC Forestry Division, we represent Montana State government's primary firefighting organization. And our fire protection mission is to protect lives, property, and natural resources from wildfire by providing safe and effective services to Montana's citizens, as well as leadership coordination and resources to the state's wildfire organizations. We provide direct protection on 5.2 million acres of land and indirect protection on 45 million acres of land under the County Co-op Fire Protection Program, where a network of over 400 fire departments carry out wildland fire protection on state and private lands that aren't covered by another agency. We have air and ground resources employing full-time, seasonal, and emergency firefighter staff across all 6 land offices, and we would love to see you in any of those places, as well as you, Director Castor and Major General. We are undergoing active training right now, and you may have seen some smoke in the air yesterday and perhaps today too. In the north end of the valley, we are conducting live fire exercises where over 50 firefighters will be completing their preseason training, and we're actually finishing the qualifications of 5 incident commanders. So feeling really good about those exercises. And we're doing this type of training all over the state of Montana with our engine academies. And Governor, we want to sincerely thank you for supporting in your budget our aviation program. You helped us get FTE and operating funds so we could forward a helicopter and have an aviation crew in Billings, Montana, which is just going to make our firefighting responses and our support of local government much more effective this year. So really appreciate that. And as everybody knows, public and firefighter safety is always our #1 priority. We're committed to aggressive initial attack, keeping fires small and short in duration, taking cost-conscious approach to how we spend Montana taxpayers' money, and instilling a culture of safety and responsibility. We're really proud of all of our partnerships today, and like you said, we're taking 30 years of working on suppressing fires and taking that approach to mitigation. We hear your charge, and we're excited to increase our footprint in that respect. So thank you for your support and for your leadership. And with that, I'll turn it to John Monzi.
Good morning, Governor, and good morning to everybody attending. I'm going to capitalize a little bit on what Colleen said, but so far, in general, our winter and spring fire season has been more active than we had the previous years. What we're seeing, and we saw this recently with the lightning bout that we had, those fires, we had a lot of ignitions for the amount of lightning, and they burned fairly actively for this time of year. And at this point, we've had 637 fires, it's probably changed since I wrote that down, and we burned about 32,471 acres. And we're expecting that within a few weeks, we're gonna see full fire activity, certainly east of the Continental Divide. So we're fighting fire, but it's about to pick up. As Colleen indicated, our prediction is across the state, we'll have above average fire. And for a fire season, that means if we just had a normal fire season, we'd still burn thousands of acres, we'd have hundreds of fires, and unfortunately, we would spend millions of dollars of the taxpayer money. So what we really want to do, DNRC strongly likes to get these messages on prevention out, but we'd like to encourage the state citizens and our visitors to remain diligent and do everything they can to prevent fires. So anyway, we're preparing, as the director said, for fire season. We've been training our seasonal personnel. We've got them hired. They're at work and should be completing training soon, within this week and next week. All our inspection work on our equipment and aircraft, that's been completed, and we plan to deploy our aircraft out in the field very soon, within the next week or two. As we mentioned, our partnerships, that's key. The fighting wildland fire in particular in the state of Montana, no one entity can do it by themselves. So those partnerships are critical. We've got our agreements in place. I have to give a shout out to the Major General and his staff. They worked real hard. We have our agreement with the National Guard. It's in place, we're ready. We have agreements with the Highway Patrol, Department of Transportation. We have agreements referred to as the Northwest Compact with other western states and up in Canada. And also we have agreements with other states. So the point is, we're ready with our resources, but we're also ready and have things in place to get resources from other areas. Hopefully we won't need them, but we have used it to a great benefit. Not to mention, we still have our national mobilization system, but we like to exercise every option we've got to bring in whatever we need when we're having these big fire seasons. So right now, we've trained over 1,000 fire people. They put in thousands of hours, and the bottom line, DNRC is ready to respond. We'll do the best job we can. And again, we have to encourage our citizens to also help us in preventing fires, no matter what activity. I know that was fast and short, but any questions?
Just one, if I could, John. So thank you. It sounds like you're ready for fire season.
Yes.
I'm just curious, if we did have a catastrophic fire, you have these reciprocal agreements with Idaho,
Yes.
North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, wherever. What is your escalation in terms of getting resources on the fire? Where do you start, and then how do you escalate?
Okay. Well, we have a whole system, and we have what we refer to as preparedness levels, and you might have heard us over time talk about we're in preparedness level 2 or 3 or 4. So what that does is that indicates to all our fire organizations a level of staffing, and we'll even go to extended hours, and we may place orders in to bring additional resources. So as our fire activity, fire behavior starts to increase and get to that extreme, we start ramping our resources up. We certainly utilize everything we have locally. That's our 400 plus fire departments, our agency partners. But if we don't feel that's enough, and we're also seeing on the ground that, say, we're not as successful in initial attack, we're only, say, catching 80% instead of what we like to be around 95, 98, we'll order those extra resources in. All these agreements facilitate that, and it makes it more turnkey, just as the Guard has indicated that they're ready. So it's a process of looking at the fire behavior, the fire activity. We have that ramping up ability, and it triggers, that extra preparedness, those extra resources. So it's a system. but all the partners use this. The beauty is we all use the same system. We're all able to assist each other. So if the BLM needed our assistance, it allows us to go over and help them. And then when we need their assistance, we see their resources coming in.
Right, we'll turn it to Rich Powder.
Too much room. Governor, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this morning on behalf of the 400-plus fire departments and over 7,500 approximately firefighters across the state of Montana to be able to be here for this briefing. I want to reiterate a couple things, but I got to pick on our partners just a little bit. There's always that one guy in the group. Sonia mentioned that they're the preeminent fire agency across the state of Montana. I won't argue that, but however, local government is the only one that's truly there 24/7, 365 year-round. And sorry, my federal partners as well. We just have to get that out there. But in all honesty, when you look at the system, it is your local government fire departments that are there around the clock. So for a lot of our early winter fire year now, on the eastern side of the state, a lot of that initial attack was performed by your local fire departments, of which the majority of those are volunteer. And I think that's very important to emphasize, because obviously as we get out of our population areas, the more rural we get in the state of Montana, the more of that backbone of initial attack is on the burden and backs of the volunteer organizations, many of which unfortunately are struggling with volunteerism as we know it across not only the state of Montana, but across the United States as a whole. So I throw that out there as the paid advertisement plug to, whatever we can do to support, volunteer fire departments and the fire system as a whole across the state is surely appreciated. John, Sonia, the director, have all mentioned the unique partnerships that we have across the state of Montana. And what I would say is that having been on some national wildland boards myself, what you find in Montana is that it is very strong. It is very unique. I come to you as the president of the State Fire Chiefs Association, but I also sit as the vice chair of the Northern Rockies Coordinating Group, which is that both federal, local, and state partnership of policy makers that have the ability to help guide us through the wildland season. And we're one of the only geographic areas in the United States that has local government representation, not only from the fire departments, but the law enforcement and our county fire wardens, as well as DES, at that table, making decisions when it comes time, that are critical. So, like I said, that is very unique. We can't underestimate the value of that, considering, like I said, across the United States, that's not commonly seen. So when we talk about these partnerships, it really truly is something that's pretty remarkable. Our county co-op programs with DNRC, while DNRC has the direct protection on the west side of the state, east side of the state is very heavily reliant on DNRC's training programs, assistance to help bolster those local fire departments with the training and the equipment and the expertise to come in and management of fires. And then locally, even with our local partners, being in the Columbus area, we partner up with BLM. While I don't order Forest Service, the Forest Service has made arrangements to say, you guys need help, our engines are down there, mutual aid kind of stuff, and you see that across the state. So that's in place. Like I said, when we look at a lot of initial attack wildland fire protection, it's borne by our volunteer departments. Really, even where we do have heavy federal or state presence, those engines, those folks are still there. They're still training up, that kind of stuff as well. They've been there for years. They'll be there for years to come, just because that's the kind of folks that we are. I will tell you as well, and give thanks to DNRC again for some of the programs that they help local government out with, such as our DOD program. Goes through DNRC. In fact, I'll be on my way to Great Falls in a couple of days to look at a couple little items that may be of unique interest to my organization. But with that help, you see all kinds of stuff from retired military helmets, those kind of things, water tanks, to just the gamut of stuff across the state that our local organizations are using. One of the things that Colleen mentioned, and I think it stands to bring out, is the long-term effects. We all know that everybody gets geared up really good for the fire season, but the more it extends, the more people get burned out. And we see that even in the professional side of things. We've talked about that with incident management teams and all that kind of stuff, but really when it goes back to local government again, remembering that those folks are really good at what they do, which is initial attack. They're not really designed a lot of times for a long-term, months on end kind of stuff. And just to keep those kind of things in mind, there is really no silver bullet solution to that, or else we would have figured it out a long time ago. But those are the concerns with a long fire season. But with that said, your local government's here, ready to roll, and will be there for the duration.
Just a quick question, I'm curious, of the 400 departments, 7,500 firefighters, how many of those are volunteers?
We estimate, it's kind of like herding cats sometimes to keep track of this, roughly 750 across the state are career.
Okay.
So the balance is volunteers.
Are career, 90%?
90% are volunteers.
Yeah. And this is beyond the scope of our discussion today, but if you have suggestions on anything the state can do to increase volunteer recruits, let us know.
We will. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rich. Turn to Disaster and Emergency Services, Delilah.
All right, well, good morning, Governor, Director Castor, General. Just a few things I want to touch on today. So again, partnership seems to be the theme, and I can't emphasize that that is critical. One thing we do enjoy is a great partnership with our local governments, county and tribal DES coordinators. That's a population we really lean into to hear what's really happening on the ground. And really what we are listening for is when these wildfires start impacting the communities themselves. We have a lot of situational tools available to us at our disposal. That's all great. Nothing really replaces the value that comes out of listening to somebody's voice on the other end of the phone, or even better, looking somebody in the eye and kind of hearing what they really need to help them through a bad day. So we offer that up to our friends at DNRC and bring that to the fight so that we always have a good idea of what's going on locally. Some things that we'll make sure we have in the hopper for you, tools at your disposal. We'll draft our emergency and disaster declarations, get those ready, try to have that ready by the third week in June, roughly. Of course, knowing that it could be needed tomorrow, it could be needed in August, but those things are tools that we'll have available for you. If we do get into a situation where we immediately need to issue a declaration, we can do that on verbal approval and catch up with the paperwork, so that will never hinder our ability to help those who need it. Just to touch on the big differences between an emergency and a disaster declaration at the state level, really it comes down to timing. So if we get into a situation where maybe there's a red flag warning or something that would need us to pre-position equipment, that emergency declaration is what we'd be looking at as opposed to a disaster, but both are available for you. One big change in years past to this year, as it was some recent legislation that went through, we won't be as confined to timelines this year as it relates to emergency and disaster declarations. It's a flexibility we're really going to enjoy, I think, as we get into this fire season, to do what we need to do for as long as we need to do it, and let the event drive the conditions. Or excuse me, let the conditions drive the event. So it's better. The other option that we'll be, keeping, primed if we get to that point, is a presidential disaster declaration request. There's two kinds of requests that we could propose for you. One being a major presidential disaster declaration. That's if we get into a situation where we've had at least $1.7 million in damage to infrastructure. And then some federal relief could be provided. We don't commonly see that. It can happen. But things like initial attack and firefighting costs, those aren't usually captured as an eligible expense in FEMA's eyes. They're not an emergency protective measure, categorically. So we don't often reach that threshold, but it can happen. The other request, and more likely that we'll see throughout the year, is a fire management assistance grant declaration. Last year we had 5 that we put forward and were received for the state of Montana. And these are, FMEGs are a request that we ask the president to allow, to provide to our state to, again, reimburse some of the firefighting costs that protect a community as it's being threatened. So you have to put that request forward when the community is being threatened. It takes a close collaboration with our friends at DNRC. happen in the middle of the night, so we need to be ready to go on that, and we are. The other thing I just want to leave you with, sir, just as far as resources that we have available, of course, the National Guard gets deployed through Disaster and Emergency Services. We also enjoy 2 compacts. One's the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, or EMAC, and the other one's the Northern Emergency Management Assistance Compact. The first, EMAC, is a governor-to-governor exchange of resources. So if we come into a situation where California maybe needs assistance from local firefighting units that could come from Montana, we would want to really have that conversation with DNRC to make sure that Montana is postured in a place where we would be okay releasing those assets. But again, we want to help where we can, and of course, we might be in a situation where we're asking for support. So that's EMAC. Again, that'd be a release from you. The Northern Emergency Management Assistance Compact is very much the same, only it deals with the border states to Canada and the Canadian provinces, fairly similar process. Sometimes we get into situations where if a community has been impacted and some community relief is needed, we also lean into the volunteer organizations active in disaster, our BOAD partners, who can often set up different resource centers for the population to come and receive, I guess, education and information on what programs would be available to assist them. So we can help kick that off as well. Depending on your questions, sir, that's what I'll show you today.
Okay, great. I'm curious about the FMAG. You said we did 5 of those last year.
Yes, sir.
What's the timeline for an approval on one of those?
It turns very quick. Usually within about 12 hours, we'll hear back from our regional level. So it doesn't need to go all the way to the headquarters level at FEMA. It can be approved at the regional level.
Okay, and FEMA approves that. What resources, is that just it's a financial assistance to cover our costs with responding, or are there additional resources?
Yes, sir. It's a financial reimbursement. 75% of the cost for that specific FMAG designated area will be reimbursed by FEMA. The other thing it does is it releases some future mitigation funding for the state. So about $500,000 per FMAG that's approved is awarded in the next year to do more mitigation, more wildfire mitigation, or all hazard mitigation.
And the criteria for that FMAG approval is really some communities being threatened.
There's a whole laundry list of what that criteria looks like and what infrastructure is being impacted. But what you're really trying to prove at that point is that you're averting a major presidential disaster declarations, that the actions you're taking is keeping us from actually needing a major presidential disaster declaration.
Thank you for your preparedness.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
All right, we'll go to the Forest Service, Melanie Glossa.
Thank you, and good morning. You know, I kind of feel like I'm just going to be repeating what you've heard already, and in a way, I feel sorry for that, but in a way, I think it's a testament to what you've heard already, which is this amazing partnership. So I'm sitting here as a representative of the Forest Service, but quite honestly, when we're talking about firefighting, it's all of us together. And so I very much think Director Castor, Sonia, John, Rich have already said many of the things that I'd written down feverishly to tell you. So I guess I'll just touch on a couple points that I think are maybe critical or really important in my mind. And that is a great thank you to the work that the state is doing around our resilient landscapes. So when you're talking about the Montana Comeback Program, when you're talking about the Montana Forest Action Plan, when we're talking about the diving into utilizing Good Neighbor Authority, all of those things couldn't be in any more alignment with what the Forest Service is doing and wanting to do, which is help in the prevention of these extreme events that we have. So right alongside of the cohesive strategy and what we're working under, which is really building resilient landscapes and ecosystems, providing help with fire-adapted communities, and then really safe and effective risk-based firefighting. So, like I said, Sonia could have been speaking for the Forest Service when she was talking about these goals and the preparedness for where we're headed. Much like you've already heard, what I want to say is it sounds like we may have an above-average fire season, and unfortunately, that's becoming our norm. And so what I would say is that from the Forest Service, we're coming with the resources we had last year. So when we're thinking about aerial resources, crews, hotshots, jumpers, we're positioned well. We're positioned as we were last year to do that. And I think Ralph was meant to be on the line for us if we have some specifics on any of the resources that are available, but I'm not sure we made that happen. So the other piece I guess I'd like to say is, you know, if there is a silver lining in the pandemic situation that we found ourselves in, and again, Sonia mentioned this, I think we found some really amazing ways to work through that, keep our firefighters and our communities safe, and we're going to learn and take that learning with us into this year. So we're not feeling like that's a limitation for us going into this next fire season. There were some heavy lessons last year, but I think we're bringing those with us this year. And then finally, I know we talked about this before, so we are moving into utilization of the unmanned aircrafts, right? It is a new tool that we're having to help us in the firefighting ability, and I know that we're having the opportunity to have some of our constituents listen in, and so would appreciate sort of the support of keeping personal UAs away from active fires. They absolutely limit us and they hamstring us and they can shut down entire fire operations. So having that just out there, that we know it's interesting, we know those tools are amazing, and allowing us to do the firefighting first would be our primary goals out there, keeping our firefighters safe. So with that, unless you have any questions.
I just appreciate the partnership. You're the deed holder to an awful lot of Western Montana. And for a lot of reasons, those lands are not as healthy as they could be. And, you know, we talk about doubling the acres under management this year from 11,000 to 25,000. But with 4 million treatable acres that are high priority, if just a little cowboy logic, if we treat an acre every 40 years, just to use a round number, just steady state, we need 100,000 acres a year. But to catch up, we probably need to do 250,000 acres a year to even get back. So we're at 25,000 acres.
Yep.
So I would just, I appreciate the partnership with the Forest Service. I would just say, let's do everything we can to jointly build capacity so we can get ahead of this with all the beetle kill, the down timber. As I mentioned, we have a forest health crisis, and the only way we're going to solve it is by working together.
Absolutely, and maybe we can set up another time and talk specifically about vegetation management, forest management, because absolutely is a priority for us as well.
We can't do it without you.
Thank you. Who goes next?
Melanie, I do. There's 6 folks on there.
And can we do just a sound check, folks? For folks on the phone, you have to *6 to unmute. All right, we'll try it again. Keep trying. They're on, they just don't want to be put on the spot though. We'll turn to John with Bureau of Land Management.
Thank you. First, let me start by saying, Governor, thanks for the invitation. It's a real joy to actually be in a room with other people and all of our partners that we haven't seen. If this was a Teams call, I'd be going crazy, but very, very grateful to you to have us here today. So I have about 3 or 4 minutes of prepared comments, but there are really 3 takeaways that I want you to remember. Number 1, the BLM's ready. Ready to take on this fire season and go the distance. Number 2, everything that Director Castor said in terms of her preparedness comments, we are in a direct complement to that. And we are ready to roll as well in that regard. And then finally, as you heard repeatedly around this table, we never go it alone, right? This is a true partnership of achievement and readiness and approach. So really grateful to the partners around this table. The one thing I do want to leave you with before I start my comments is my one concern, and that's the long haul capacity of our fire forces. Going in, we're ready to roll. Coming out, depending on how hard and long and arduous this is, we're going to wear people out. And that's a challenge and a difficulty that is hard to plan and work through. All right. Montana Dakota's BLM is prepared to respond to fires this year. We continue to support our local and state and federal partners with this effort. In 2020, 85 wildfires burned over 6,000 acres of BLM-administered lands in Montana. We responded to an additional 42 fires that burned 3,000 acres on private, state, and other federal agency lands as a protecting agency through established agreements that we have. Our firefighters and support personnel also provided assistance to natural disasters and pandemic responses all over the country, in addition to the national and international wildfire suppression efforts. We are in direct cooperation and support of our local fire departments. And Rich, thank you for your comments earlier. The county, state agencies are critical to the ongoing success of BLM's firefighting efforts in Montana. BLM continues to work with our partners in preparedness and prevention and to provide assistance to each other in incidents across our landscape. Last year, we exchanged more than $4 million of reimbursements to DNRC regarding those efforts. Firefighter safety is our highest priority, very much underscored by the loss of Tim Hart. We will continue to do everything we can to protect lives and infrastructure and resources from unwanted and damaging wildfire. And we need to protect the vast public lands that are critical to the economic engine of this country and of the state of Montana while we do that. Our firefighter forces remain stable going in. We have 18 wildland fire engines, 2 water tenders out there, 1 Type 2 initial attack team, which is a veteran hand crew that we're very proud of, and we're using them all over the state now. We have 175 boots on the ground firefighters and an additional 215 support personnel. And just today, Aaron flashed me a text message that we're loading heavy tankers at the Billings Tanker Base this very moment in support of a fire in Buffalo, Wyoming. So the season is upon us and we're rolling. In 21, Congress allocated BLM $9 million, the entire BLM. Of that, Montana got about $1 million. And we're using that to fill critical skill needs that we have in our firefighter program, from firefighter positions to some of our planning responsibilities. And it's an important addition, and we're glad to have it. I wish it were more. Unfortunately, we're limited by that as well. Our aviation resources include 2 Type 3 helicopters and our Helitack modules. They're located in Lewistown and Miles City. And we additionally host 4 single engine air tankers or seats. We normally bring them on in July, but this year we're bringing them on June 15. And we will have all of those also located in eastern Montana with the seat bases out of Lewistown and Miles City. Our fire cache in Billings is operational. It's only one of only 16 level 2 interagency support caches. They're able to support 1,200 firefighters at any given moment. That cache is large and it adheres to the standards needed for any agency needing refurbishing in regard to whether it's hose or pumps or whatever it might be. The fire cache is live and active. Our dispatch centers are fully staffed and also in full operation. We dispatch more than 1,000 total resources, crews, equipment, et cetera, through a fiscal year, and we will have those dispatch centers on 7-day alert starting in June and going on through September or as long as this fire season may last. I do fear that we're going to also see some of our personnel there having a weary season, right? So the end of the season is more worrisome to me than the going in component. I want to talk a little bit about our community assistance agreements. They're extremely important to us. They help us to provide some financial support and expertise to the local fire departments we have across the landscape of Montana and in the Dakotas as well. And that's very important for us to do because they help us, as you have heard, they're closest resources. They're the first ones on the fire. And we want to make sure we're doing everything to help them with their readiness going into the fire season. For that reason, we educate them We assist them and we provide them substantial funding every year going through the year. We also provide them with equipment, engines, et cetera, that are coming out of our use, and we're donating them to many local fire departments. And those engines are also ready to roll. They're refurbed and active. We continue to work very closely with our tribal partners. We have a very large relationship with all of the tribal partners across Montana, and it's very important to us that we continue to do that. So far this year, we have burned over 35,000 acres of prescribed burn activity. We were limited by drought some this year. We were also limited by crew availability, but we did what was possible, and that is an extraordinary goal. We're also going to continue to do fuels work out there mechanically with some of our crews and trying to treat lands without putting smoke in the air. Lots of mechanical and prescribed fire treatments have happened, and we're hoping to, in the mechanical side, do an additional 15,000 acres this year, and that's an important goal and achievement. Our cooperative partners between us and local fire departments are critical to our collective success. They affect our grazing, recreation, wildlife, and other valuable programs that we have. And they are not only valuable to the Bureau of Land Management, they are exceptionally valuable to the rural economies of Montana. So it's important to us that those partnerships are there and that we're doing everything in that partnership to get there fast and put them out as quickly as we can. And where we can't, we got to go an extended attack, we bring in the resources around this table to help us do that. Hopefully all the aircraft we have can make a big difference this year. Let me just stop there by saying thank you to the partners that we have, and especially a big tip of the hat to the local fire departments.
Thank you, John. And as the other large deed holder at the table, I appreciate your leaning in on this. I saw some of the work you did on BLM property down out of the Miles City office with the mastication and fuel reduction. Talking to the local leaseholders after we thinned and reduced, the groundwater was coming back in the streams, the wildlife was coming back, the healthier forest, everybody benefits. So I just appreciate you continuing to work that.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome. Glad to do it. I'm not sure who's next.
We're going to turn to Jim, Fish and Wildlife Service.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Governor. Jim Forsyth again, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Fairly new to my position here. I'm 2.5 weeks in, but I do have a long history of fighting fire in eastern Montana, well, throughout Montana. And as the agency rep for the Fish and Wildlife Service, I can tell you that, and as you probably know, we're typically the small federal agency when it comes to fire resources. And even though we're small, we are fully staffed this year, and we are ready to go. And we're ready to help our cooperators because, as you've heard everyone else say, we can't do it alone. And we rely on our cooperators, and we are there to help our cooperators when needed. Probably the biggest concern for us right now, since the majority of our lands are in eastern Montana, is we're trending towards similar fuels conditions along the Missouri River breaks as in 2017. And I know you remember that because we met you out at Sand Springs that year when, I believe at that time, and it still may be, the largest wildfire in northern Rockies happened. And we feel that we're heading in that same direction in eastern Montana. So we recognize that if conditions persist and rain doesn't occur, it's going to take an all hands, all lands approach, and we're fully committed to that. We have a great fire staff. I got to meet them. They're training hard mentally and physically for a long duration season. We have great support, leadership locally, regionally, and nationally, and everyone is there and ready to help us when the call comes. So short and sweet. I can't speak to fuels management, but the agency is very committed to fuels management, and we hope to increase our fuels management moving forward. But I'll have a better briefing for you on that next year.
Congratulations on your new position.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna try, the phone. Bryce, are you on with Bureau of Indian Affairs? And if you are, Bryce, if you could just introduce yourself.
Yep. Yes?
Yeah, and Bryce, I'd just say, if you could speak a little louder so the room can hear you.
Okay. All right. Good morning, Governor. Appreciate it. Always actually happy to be here in person. Bryce Rodriguez, the regional fire officer, the area of not regional buildings. I have sort of a little issue to support from all of them as well as fire, all of our ways. I have always studied the ways to reservations in Montana. That includes Rex, Watch Boy, Hold On It, Word Bank, Crow, and North China, and one River. So, each unit has it's a big way used to provide additional background locally. We have two helicopters in the region. One is going there, so they will be down. Both their factory, the other one is stationed in Crow Agency. So we have now on June 22nd. We also have a hotshot crew that's located for Washington Control Fire Management. We're a national asset chief on hotshots. We hope we will go after strict reviews. We'll be represented next week. 2020, for the fires was 731 PA trust lines. 90% of those fires were less than 10 acres. No large fires last year with incident management teams. We did have one that was 52,000 acres. The Sergeant Fire, the closing fire, the fire command and city, all the Crow, the Northern Shack, the state, the local governments. Quite interesting. Pretty big for it. Long-term security, we have one currently in place for that we deal with in the north corner. That is until July 1st. So that is the report. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right, is Jay Lesher, are you on the line? National Park Service.
Yes?
Hey, good morning, Governor. I'm Jay Lesher, Regional Fire Management Officer for the National Park Service in the Mountain Region. We're excited to attend your briefing in person today. We do have offices in Nelson and Glacier National Park with full staff this year. With our own fire management staff, 2 engines, and 1 X-ray helicopter that share all capable. Look forward to continuing our partnerships throughout Montana with all the partners, being able to respond to instances that come up, and continue to be active in management of the fire tools across the landscapes and all our national parks. One of the big things for us is ensuring that our national parks are available to the citizens of Montana and all the districts that help be an economic driver overall in the state of Montana. We are doing a lot of improvements, especially in Yellowstone National Park. We're about first in the fall, and we're looking at doing a lot of work around areas of Old Faithful and the Grant Hills this year to continue to protect the historic assets that we have there. Overall, we're really excited to begin this year. We do have concerns about the drought, especially in Yellowstone. They are much lower than elevation than they happened in the last couple of years, but we feel that we are prepared this year. That's all for our comments in the National Park Service.
Just one question, Jay, if I could. The state of Montana and DNRC is committed to aggressive initial attack. Is the National Park Service also committed to follow Montana's policy and have an aggressive initial attack on fire starts?
So, Governor, the National Park Service, we do have an aggressive initial response, but we do look at how fires can take natural role on the landscape. Yellowstone's a very large area, and a number of places where fire is part of the national ecosystem.
So Jay, my question is different. Aggressive initial attack includes extinguishing the fire. Are you committed to aggressive initial attack and extinguishment of the fires?
No fire jet, Governor.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Yes, Governor, no fires. Yes.
So all fires in the national park will be extinguished immediately when they're detected?
No, Governor.
So, because I was on the fire in Glacier when we watched the cabins burn around Lake McDonald because there was not aggressive initial attack. This is a follow-on discussion. I'd like to have an additional conversation about how we do aggressive initial attack on lands in the state of Montana, including Glacier National Park.
Yes, Governor, I'd love to have another conversation with you and also with our regional director. In Glacier, we do send that big more initial tactical fires out small air. But Yellowstone is a place that we really using fire to do that active forest management.
Okay, because not having aggressive initial attack threatens surrounding communities, and as a team, that's not in Montana's best interest.
Yes, Governor, we do see that, and in your example of Glacier is a place that we often do aggressive initial attack. And the fire in Lake McDonald was under an aggressive initial attack strategy. But here's the number of fires in the other counties of Glacier was not a high priority on that first day, and then continued to grow several days after that, just because of the extreme drought conditions.
Okay, well, I'd love to understand I'm hearing a couple of different things. If you could provide your initial attack policy in writing to us, I would appreciate that.
Sure, Governor, we will get that to you.
Okay.
Department of Environmental Quality, David.
All right. Well, good morning, Governor. Very nice to meet you. Some of you around the table I have met, some of you I have not. Likewise, it is a privilege to be here. I think it's very appropriate, again, that air quality is here, and I think it's very appropriate that air quality goes last, quite frankly. Because I don't want to have air quality, right, or air quality issues or services we provide in any way, shape, or form, detract from the serious impacts or lives and whatnot that people are risking as they fight fires or manage fires, whatever case it may be. So I will admit that sitting here, my heart sunk a little bit as I heard the report, not just as a lifelong Montanan who doesn't like seeing my favorite spots go up in flames, or I don't like seeing people risk or sometimes lose their lives, in fighting fires, but also as an air quality professional over the last 30 years, this is the time of year that has been very challenging from an air quality perspective. So in my line of work, we say where there is fire, there is smoke, right? And those are some of the management issues that we have to deal with. And Governor, I want to make you aware of some of the services that we provide. So there really isn't a fire season for us. There may be a wildfire season versus a prescribed fire season, but generally air quality continues year round. So to that end, we have already deployed strategically roughly 24 monitors, air quality monitors around the state that will assess the air quality in various communities or various areas. Now, we've adjusted that from time to time based upon what we've learned in preceding years. From that, we offered the data that we collect through the Today's Air website to every citizen in Montana. It's not also available to folks that are sitting around this table who may need information as to how to plan and manage and or attack these fires. Air quality has risen prominently over the last 5 to 7, maybe 10 years, into some of the decisions that are made. So we want to make sure that people have really good data. And I will add that we monitor data year-round for a variety of reasons. What we're talking about is maybe managing or attacking fires in Montana. As we all know, smoke knows no borders. It comes from the United States, it comes from other countries, and it can come really at any time of year. And so, again, we have monitoring services that we currently provide, and we also have a cache of monitors that can be very quickly deployed in the matter of hours. Sometimes it takes 10 hours to drive to one end of the state, 2 hours to get it on our website, and there will be a dot that will be producing data within that 10 to 12 hour time frame. Much shorter if it's closer, clearly. One of the other services we provide is smoke forecasting. When we're in the middle of fire season, people want to know, how bad's it going to be? How long is it going to last? Where's it going to go? We also employ a meteorologist that has worked very closely, with Colleen, with other Forest Service or other meteorologists to share information, as best we can. Smoke forecasting is an evolving science, at least from my experience, and they get reasonably accurate, which at this point in time is, quite frankly, the best that we can provide. As far as coordination, I'm very pleased to be sitting between the federal government and the local folks, and as well as coordinating with the state agencies. While we still probably have a long way to go, the partnerships that we enjoy have improved drastically. And I want to underscore the efforts that Sonia has brought, the Air Quality Bureau into, just talking about the number of starts, where they're located. It helps us get prepared as to where some of the calls might be coming from. We also work with a variety of state agencies and entities, Disaster and Emergency Services, Department of Commerce. We're already receiving calls from folks who are planning a vacation in Montana, and they want to know what it's going to be like. Or when we're in the middle of it, if I go to Glacier National Park, am I going to be able to see anything? And we work very closely, with the Department of Commerce, so the Department of Commerce has that information and can provide that information to folks. Also, citizens and scheduling football games. People don't want to hear from Air Quality whether they should have a football game in Missoula. They want to hear from the local health department, the doctors, those folks who can take that data and provide some meaningful information, to them so that decisions can be made appropriately for the better protection of all. So those are just some of the services we offer, Governor, and I know we're talking about wildfire. I want to emphasize that we're really trying to change at least the culture in air quality and maybe across the state, that prescribed fire really can be used as a way to mitigate at least some of the air quality impacts from wildfire. And those folks that are in the Air Quality Bureau are at your service as well during times of, winter months of whatnot. We can find windows that are appropriate, that don't create unintended consequences from an air quality perspective, to be able to accomplish some of these burns, and we're more than willing and happy to coordinate with that. Thank you.
And I think that air quality is one of the biggest concerns for Montanans, is whether there's a fire locally or not, they're breathing. And particularly for people with compromised lung conditions, asthma, it's in past years, it's become a fact. People can't stay here. They have to leave for their own health. So I appreciate that monitoring what you do and having resources to back up everybody.
Thank you.
David, I hope it's okay, Governor, if I could, well, Jim is newly into this position, just learned that David is going to be leaving soon.
Governor, I did not want to go before attending. No, this is how important it is, because, we've dealt with factories and all sorts of air pollution. Really, what we've been facing and our future in air quality is really smoke related, right, and impacts. And so, yes, at noon today, I will be off, but I did not want to go without attending this. It is that important, that I get to meet my governor, my boss, of course, but also I do think air quality is very important and should be helpful to all of you, not a hindrance. So thank you.
Thank you for your service. We wish you the best.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Governor. Bottom line up front, sir, is your Montana National Guard is ready. And I'm going to be a broken record. We're ready because most of the people in this room have helped us get ready. But we're ready with some limitations, sir. We've got 6 of our major units that are going to overseas deployments for this year. 2 of them are firefighter units, so probably have the most utility to John Monzi, and they won't be available. We've got our biggest unit, the 163rd Combined Arms Battalion. They're deploying also, and while their tanks and Bradleys aren't going to do us much good for fire season, that's where we go for the people. That's the most amount of people and general purpose troops will have some limitations. And then we've got an Uber-capable engineer platoon or company that's also deployed in the 219th Red Horse. So that leaves us, sir, with 677 people that will be unavailable for fires. We've got 314 volunteers. Those are the first ones that we'll call. And when we run out of those, we have another 1,432 available. That's sort of the bad news, sir. The good news is that our aviation battalion, this is the first year in about 7 years where no part of them is deployed for fire season. So, so we've got 9 aircraft crewed for our Chinooks. We've got 6 aircraft crewed for our Blackhawks. Our medevac that can either do bucket operations or medevac if they're needed. We have 3 crews available for them with aircraft. And then 1 Lakota that might do fire reconnaissance or mapping. And we've got a crew available with the aircraft for them. Some of our vehicles are gone due to the deployments, but we've got over 100 Humvees and over 75 general purpose vehicles that should get us through anything that DNRC might need. We've got mission support packages that we put together, sir, and probably most relevant is for immediate attack and initial response. We've got probably a Black Hawk and a Chinook crewed most of the time with our aviators doing flying. So what we've done, sir, to prepare so far and get ready is we have sat down with DNRC and DES and put together our MOA for fire season. That's really a great product that's been living for about 7 years. Other state National Guards have called Montana to get that product, but it's very mature and a good tool for fire season. We issued our wildlands order to the troops. We got a briefing from Colleen's folks for that. What we have left, sir, is an exercise with DES and then firefighting that the Forest Service is helping us out with instructors. So thanks to all partners in helping us get ready for fire season. Sir, we've also pre-coordinated some emergency management, the EMACs with other states, giving them a heads up for what our personnel situation looks like should you need additional military type assistance for fire season. So, sir, subject to your question, we hope you don't need us, but we're going to be ready if we get the call.
Great. So just to summarize, even with the deployment overseas, you've got 1,700 folks on call, plus the air assets, ground assets, and the Chinooks lift water buckets.
Correct,
right?
sir.
So they can put water on the fire.
They can, and they can put a lot more water on it than the Blackhawks, sir.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for being so good.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right, Governor, that concludes
So-
the briefing, and so I
So
wanted to,
can I
yeah,
go back? I'm sorry.
yeah,
Again,
of
the guy in
course.
the crowd. Governor, I just wanted to, I got to thinking as we were listening to the different speakers talk, a lot of times we talk in generalizations, and I'm gonna give you a specific example, in specific to our mitigation programs, of kind of the holistic approach, and I can use myself as that example. I was a volunteer fire chief of my organization, and when we started to develop a mitigation program in my organization, that's kind of one of the things that started to push me, or push our organization to put in a paid position, and through our partnerships with DNRC and the community assistance money. So we have now run a mitigation. It brought me on, it brought my now vice president, no, he's the assistant chief, on, because he had experience with running a mitigation crew. When we talk about a holistic approach to that, so what we're doing now is we're doing a mitigation program in our community for Stillwater County. What that also does is it generates the capability for us to put on extra staffing in the summer to manage or to be that mitigation crew, which in turn gives us locally extra forces when we need them. It also gives DNRC extra forces when they need them, and our federal partners and everything. So from a holistic approach, it's much more than just removing some fuel off the landscape. In our particular case, it's strengthened that overall protection capability for our local community while accomplishing the target, of acres accomplished. And so I think sometimes it's good to focus down on some specifics, just to say, that target or that model can be utilized across the state to help encourage more local government departments to be able to do that capacity or through our partnerships or whatnot. But it's much more than just taking some fuel off the landscape. It really creates a holistic approach, which then puts in place for us a resident volunteer firefighter program that has a job in the summer and creates now a year-round protection increase for our taxpayers at a lot lower cost. So I meant to bring that up in my initial go-around, but it probably fits better now. So thank you for that, Go Pat.
Well, all I really have to say in closing is thank you. Clearly, you've been working hard to be prepared. You've invested the time to come here and perform this briefing. I think this is like, it's time to, bump fists and get to work. Frankly, I'm disappointed with the weather forecast. But each of you traveling to be here, your clear expertise and professionalism, I think working together, we don't know what the future holds this summer. The forecast is not great, but we could not be more prepared. And I just appreciate this. And just know the governor's office, our door's open. When we can help, let us know. And if there are incidents, be assured we'll be out there by your side trying to stay out of the way so you can do your jobs. And I just appreciate all the work that you've put in to get us ready for this fire season. Thank you so much.